Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with People as Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on a Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And joining us for this week's episode is Lauren. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You've got a really cool thing going here, so I'm excited to be a part of it, and I always love to hear the sound of my own voice. So thanks for asking me to join you.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll start out with our opening question here to get your hard claim. But before we do that, so we did this setup here. You did draw the lunatic token. That does mean you are the demon. I have already switched these tokens on the grimoire. So Lauren, you are the Fangu.
Excellent. That's what I wanted to hear.
Your evil team would be seat 7 and seat 12, if you care about that.
Good to know.
The three characters that are not in play are Balloonist, Fortune Teller, and Raven Keeper. So with that in mind, what would you like to hard claim if you were talking to somebody on day one?
Yeah, you know what? If it's a bluff for me, I've got to claim Fortune Teller. That's my go-to. I've won many a game bluffing Fortune Teller. I have lost many a game bluffing Fortune Teller. I've not been believed when I actually am the Fortune Teller, but I know I have someone I can jump to whenever I want, so why not?
So what kind of fortune teller information would you put out on day one, or would you?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't actually hard claim Fortune Teller to everyone I spoke, but I would definitely get that hard claim out there. I'd probably say I had a no, and so I was going to hold off on who my no was on for now. And then that way, if I feel like I'm trusted and it's time to circle back to my information later, and I know who a new demon is once I'm dead, maybe I throw that in there if they're suspecting me of having been a Fangu who jumped. I definitely put it elsewhere. So yeah, that's probably how I would play it.
All right. Well, speaking of jumping, let's see who you would pick if it's night 2. Who would you like to kill?
Um, hmm. If there was no suspicion on me, because obviously you'd be telling me that I have a lunatic, correct? So which
Oh
seat
yeah,
is
I guess you would know that. You would know that your lunatic is seat 10.
seat 10? Okay. If there's no suspicion on me right away, and I've chatted with seat 10 and they seem to be comfortable in whatever bluff they were given, I'd probably go along with their kill. That's probably what I would do. But I'm not opposed to jumping to a lunatic right away to make sure they have a good bluff as the demon. So it really would depend on how the first day went, I think, and who they picked. You know, if they picked me, I'm jumping to them very quickly.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so I guess that all. So who do they pick? Which seat does seat 10 pick? I'm making you do so much here. So sorry.
Who would the seat 10 pick? I guess it's hard to say. The question is, do I want to make you jump or not?
Right. You know what? Let's do it. Let's just jump to seat 10, and I'll try and make sure they have a good bluff moving forward.
All right. Well, in that case, you would have died in the night. Switch their character
the
here.
Fortune Teller only got one night of info, but
right. You hate to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, with all that out of the way, when did you discover Blood on a Clocktower?
It was October of 2021, fall of 2021. I had heard rumblings of it that summer. There was a group I played Werewolf and like Secret H with a lot, both One Night Ultimate Werewolf online as well as like a long form on Zoom that actually operates very similarly to how, especially the original website for Clocktower being played on Zoom would operate, with the difference being that once you were dead, you were dead. So it was actually, I don't know if you're a Survivor fan, but PG Law from Survivor had a PG Plays Twitch stream, and she had patrons, and I was one of those patrons, and she brought it to us. And I didn't play with them the first couple months. I was busy, and I hate learning new games. It's the bane of my existence. Nothing is more painful to me than being sat down and taught how to play a new game, tabletop or otherwise. And so I didn't play with them at first, and then I kind of got talked into it. So at that point, they were all sort of familiar with it, and I was the poisoner. I poisoned the saint on 2 consecutive nights. We did execute him while he was poisoned. The
I have
demon.
yet to see that. That is one of the main things I've always wanted to see, and I've never seen that in one of the games.
Oh, I saw it right away. The demon celebrated when the saint was executed, and luckily no one else noticed because I was just like, no, no. We ended up winning, and it was the final 3 were the 3 evils, so we did okay
Amazing.
despite that because everyone's worldviews were just so confused once the guy swearing up and down that he was the saint was executed and the game continued. So, I mean, we could have had a much faster win, but I guess I like to make things interesting, and I just didn't know what I was doing. But it was fun. It was very stressful, but it was a lot of fun. And I was looking at my conversations because it was over Discord with the fellow who Jimothy was storytelling. He's still
Oh yeah, yeah.
plays in this community, and my very first Clocktower related message to anyone was, so what does it mean if I poison someone? And the message I get in reply was, your demon is Joe, your fellow minion is Scott. Like, I hadn't even waited for my minion information yet. I was just like, what does this mean? What's happening? And then he explained, yeah, no, it was this whole conversation is hilarious because I was just clueless, but we got a win. I poisoned the saint, rite of passage, I guess. So you never forget your first game of Clocktower.
Right. Would you say you were hooked immediately, or at what point would you say you were hooked?
I liked it. I enjoyed it, but I was so stressed the whole time because I didn't want to let anybody down. And I was so used to our long form werewolf that took so long to set up and went on for so long. And we'd only play it once every couple of weeks. And you want a good, long, interesting game. And so, especially as evil, I would always feel really stressed that I would ruin everything and it would end. And then that was that. And so it really wasn't until I started playing a bit more and the opportunities to play a bit more happened that it's like we can just re-rack and continue. I'm not mad at anybody else when that happens, so why should I be thinking they'd be mad at me?
Right.
And I feel like I've just gotten a little better and better with that since then as well, because that kind of took a while. So I was stressed. I think I had a pretty rough game that I don't even quite remember after that, and then took a bit of a break and came back and just begged to just not be the demon when I came back. And I was the Nodashi, but I got a win. So I was like, okay, we'll try it. And it was actually a game of catfishing that really got me hooked, which was why I thought this would be a fun script to have up today. At that point, I had played a few, but that's when I was like, oh no, this is superior to Werewolf. It's superior to any of these other games. And I really want to sink my teeth into it.
Right. Do you have an estimate about how many games you played?
I don't know if I've hit 1,000 yet, but I feel like I might be pretty close. I maybe the lowest would be maybe 600. So I think there was a time where I was just constantly playing all the time, and if you include teensies and things like that, I was really racking up the games for a bit. Then it slowed down. It has ebbs and flows. This week I've been playing so much. It really, really kind of depends. But I'm gonna maybe I'll just to play it safe because I don't want to lie. I will say maybe around 600, 650, something like that.
All right. Yeah. So how often do you get to play right now? Roughly, like every week.
Yeah, if I want to play, I can usually find somewhere to play. So I think on average it's usually maybe 2 days a week I'll play a couple games, like a game or two. But sometimes it's a lot more than that, and then sometimes life gets in the way and it's none at all. And I notice it when it's none at all. It's like I need to lie to somebody. What's happening? I need to get myself in a game and lie to somebody because it's been far too long.
How many in-person games have you gotten to play?
I first played an in-person game, I think maybe March of 2023. I finally was like, I was anxious to do that. And then when I finally joined one with a local group, that wasn't too far away from me. I realized that experience level wise, I fit right in. I probably had more games under my belt than the majority of people there. And because I had just always expect everybody to be heads and tails above me, and again, just worrying that I'm going to let people down. What I've come to realize too is that experience only goes so far. Everybody can get it completely wrong, and brand new players can make spectacular plays, and
Yep.
so that doesn't worry me as much anymore. So now I don't know. I feel like it's been a little while. We had it going once every couple weeks for a bit, then it was once a month. Now it's sort of this group is really fun, and so we'll sort of arrange a barbecue. Or recently, friends, their wedding reception was just entirely Clocktower themed. I actually tried my hand at making a script and made a wedding themed Clocktower script, and we just played that all day. And so it's almost like special occasions now. We'll all get together and play. But so yeah, it's in person. It's maybe every couple months.
Oh, that's fun. What do you think about the differences between playing online versus in person?
I think I really enjoy both. I do think they're quite a bit different. I was talking before about the putting pressure on myself. I'm just someone who naturally does that, even when there are really no stakes. It's a game. I do put pressure on myself. I don't want to screw something up. Sometimes because it's like I could do a really cool thing here, and it'll be such a bummer if I misspeak or forget something and don't get to do the cool thing that I want to try. In person, I put a lot less pressure on myself because it's far more reasonable to forget pieces of info, forget what someone claimed to me or what you claimed to somebody else.
Hmm.
And so that's both true if you're making that info up or if you actually received it. So if you're stumbling over the savant information that you received in an in-person game, they're not going to necessarily be like, oh, you're lying, I can tell, or why didn't you write it down or something like that. And so that's kind of freeing, good or evil, I think. So that's fun.
Yeah.
I also there are other tricks that you need to watch out for in person that aren't really an issue online. Of course, online sometimes people try and track who talks to who first and everything, but in person, there's one person I play with in person who really watches where, like, if somebody holds up their script, where on the script they're pointing when they're pointing to
Hmm.
what their roles might be. And she's so good at clocking the evil team immediately, sometimes down to the roles. It's frustrating, but everyone can play how they can. And so now it's kind of turned into this stealthy, we need to avoid this person, or we need to hide, or everybody hides, or you turn your script upside down when you're pointing, and fun things like that.
Well, I've never heard of
Um,
that one before. That's
yeah,
great.
it's they do everything to try to avoid getting caught on day one.
It's when you have your paper and
And
you're like, I'm the top four, and you're pointing down here, and everybody's like,
exactly,
you're evil.
exactly. So it's so that those are things to watch out for. There are different strategies that sometimes come into play. And I had a really fun game where that person clocked the evil team day one. And I was the goon who was killed by the assassin that night. And I claimed Exorcist and counterclaimed the Exorcist. And we managed to get to the end and win despite the evil team having been clocked. That wasn't because of me. I think they benefited from having another evil, but the demon did a really, really good job of convincing this person that she was simply wrong. But that was that was fun. That was a fun win.
Yeah, body language for me is probably the biggest difference. And similar to what you just said, we did play in an in-person game, and mostly it was somebody else noticing this, but I noticed it a little bit too. Just had two people who just seemed really shifty when they're talking to each other, and they looked like they were pointing at the bottom of the
Yeah.
script. And we were pretty convinced they were both minions, and they were.
Yeah. No, I think the space you play in is important. If there are multiple rooms or just areas that people can duck into, I think that's really good. I played in a board game cafe once where there was this other player. He was brand new to the game, and he just decided to bring the skill set he had, even if he wasn't quite sure what the game was yet. And apparently the skill set is stealth. And so people were like, he was literally on the other side of a bookshelf, just peering in and listening, which is
Wow.
not really something you should do in this game, but everybody was just having fun. And it is really funny to be having a conversation and just turn and there's just this face right there. So not something I recommend, but
Right.
when you play with fun people, fun things happen, and everybody was enjoying it.
That should be the tagline for this episode. When you play with fun people, fun things
Fun
happen.
things happen.
The space is always interesting to think about because I like running my games where you don't necessarily have to stay in the circle, but I do like at least everybody being able to see each other. Some people do like just letting people go in the other rooms. I don't prefer that, but it works for some groups. The original game actually recommends everybody just staying within the circle,
Oh,
and
interesting.
it's meant to be risky to talk to other
Right.
people. So
That
um,
makes sense.
yeah, there's a few different ways to do that, but it's pretty interesting. You mentioned making your first script. So what was that like as somebody who normally just is mainly a player?
Yeah, I mean, I went into it like this is wedding themed. It's, part of it is we framed it and gave it to them as part of their gift. They also received a Grim as part of their gift.
Oh,
They had a Clocktower themed wedding cake. It was it was a good day. And so yeah, I made a script. I called it do you, and um started out by just any character that could be at a wedding, was sort of adding that, and then consulted with a friend who has played a lot of games that I don't even know. I feel like he's story told a lot. I don't know if he's made a ton of scripts, but he has story told a lot, a lot, a lot. And he made some suggestions. And so there's going to be an assassin at the wedding. Can't really explain why, but but little things that just made sense. Like it's like if you're going to have a gossip, it's handy to have an assassin. Little things like that.
right.
And yeah, and then we played it, and the games are really good. Actually online recently, we've played it as well, with a group I've recently started playing with sometimes, and I was like, wow, this has legs. It's a decent script. I'm gonna officially upload it, and so I'm kind of proud of it. I'm sure there are ways that it could be a total disaster, but I think that's true with most any script. So it was a fun little experiment, and it's something I might dabble in again.
Yeah, script writing is definitely a difficult. It's surprisingly difficult, at least to write a good script.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Now that I have much, I always had respect for everybody that made a good script, but now I can understand the intricacies a little bit more, having tried my hand at it for sure. I would hate it. We had one game where it was a leech game that ended almost immediately because the leech hosted the steward who nominated, not even a virgin, but the minion who chose to claim virgin, the preached minion who chose to claim virgin. And so it was just that ended very fast, and so I would hate for that to happen, on stream. But again, it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. Leech is tough with characters who are okay with dying pretty
Yeah,
easily.
yeah, and I
But
guess yeah,
yeah,
and that's what I realized too as a storyteller, which I haven't had. I've story told some trouble brewing, and that's about it. But a storyteller can look at that script, and that influences what characters they put in play too, which is probably why there wasn't a virgin in play, to really make it clear. Like basically they killed me and then they killed the steward for fear that the steward was the steward who saw me, for fear that the steward was a leech. It was bad. But sometimes the colossal failure moments are just as fun. um,
right.
so but yeah, no, I don't know. So far we've had some really fun games with that script, so I'm excited to see where it
Uh,
goes.
I often think about the game I ran that was the Poppy Grower game, and the psychopath kills their demon like right away,
Yes.
day one.
And I think I was a
No,
minion in that game. And yeah, I wasn't involved in the bloodshed, but I watched it. That was funny.
all right, so when you sit down and you're about to draw a token for the game, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Are you kind of like looking at the script? You just kind of filling everybody out?
You know what? That depends in person versus online as well. In person, I'm looking at the script because once we draw those tokens and hand them out, we have to close our eyes. So I
Right.
can't then be thinking about what I might claim to be, what else is in play. So especially if you're evil, so like what to watch out for, if I'm for fear that I'm going to draw an evil token, I like to check and see if there's a chambermaid on the script, and I like to check and see if there's an investigator on the script, because that might influence what I might try and bluff as before I get a bluff, or even after I get a bluff. So I'm really studying a script before the game starts, if I remember to. Online, yeah, it's more just vibes, chatting, hoping I'm gonna be good, or an evil townsfolk. If there's an option to be an evil townsfolk, I love that. But otherwise, I hope I'm gonna be good. I will say, as the token was spinning even today, and you start to see the blue, that's always the worst feeling. When you see the blue and you're like, oh, good, and then it's the lunatic token. It's like, oh no, I'm definitely the demon. But I mean, that's the luck of the draw. So.
How do you feel about turning evil in the middle of the game, like through a goon, cult leader, Fangu jump, etc., etc.?
I it seems to happen to me a lot, and there is a part of me that enjoys it. I think when you become the demon, that can be pretty stressful. A Fangu jump, if you have, if I, as an outsider in a game with a Fangu script, have successfully seemed to have fallen into a bluff that isn't a double claim and people seem to believe, then I think that's really fun. If that hasn't happened and I suddenly get jumped to, or if I've told someone I'm an outsider, that can be stressful. I do think sometimes, depending on how you reveal you're an outsider, you're at least securing that you're going to be either the frame or the demon in the final three. So then you just, go for it and try your best. So I don't mind that as much. Cult leader, Mez, I'll take a Mez word, even if it's a last ditch effort from evil and it looks like they're gonna lose. I'll take a Mez word. I'll try to vote for the demon during the day if it looks like that might be what's happening, but I am always happy to join the evil team and help out. Bounty hunter turned townsfolk is my absolute favorite. I always hope for that. And I mean, a politician, that all the things I talked about that stress me out, like being the reason you lose, suddenly that is your power. So I really like politician for that reason. I think I've only been the politician once, and it was in one of your games. But and then goon, I don't know how to play goon, to be honest, because you just don't know how long you're going to be evil. So if you're an assassin killed goon,
Right.
got it. But otherwise, I'm usually a little more timid there, and maybe just waiting for a Fingu jump. I'll just put it out there. Please don't summon me. And I'd rather you not do that. And actually, Kazali, I don't feel any obligation to pick me. That's not evil turn townsfolk. That's ripping my townsfolk ability out of my hands.
That's fair. I told Nina with the setup that if you drew an outsider token, then halfway through this interview, I would have been like, oh, by the way, now you're the evil Fangu.
Yeah, you know what? I'm always prepared for it, especially on this script with a pit hag. That could happen at any time.
Are there any kind of characters you prefer to avoid?
I think honestly, the ones that bore me. And you know what? It's not fair. A friend gave me a really long speech of why the butler is a really important character in Blood on the Clocktower, and he made some points. So I don't think there's anything that I really, really don't like. There are certainly some that are more exciting than others. I really like if I get a role that I've never been before. I'm still waiting for the day that I'm the atheist, and hope that the storyteller wants to make some kind of deal with me or something, because I'm more than happy to be sketchy and then be like, oops, I'm actually the atheist. I think that would be really fun. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I really don't like. I think for me, the Puka stresses me out a lot. I've had some bad BMR games as the Puka where I just can't kill anybody and I don't quite know why.
No.
And I love solving puzzles in the game, But when you're evil, having to solve a puzzle of what's going on, usually you know when you're evil what's going on, but in BMR, you don't always. So if you're trying to solve a puzzle of what's going on, pretend you're with good trying to solve their puzzle, trying to create fake worlds that throw off. There's just too much you have to do. And so I guess actually my answer is a very hard puka.
Okay, fair enough.
I did once win Blind Man's Bluff as Puka though, and that was a good game.
That's good. So thinking about the base scripts, you got Trouble Brain, Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violets. Which of those would you say is your favorite?
I think I like a classic TB. I think for a while after playing it a little bit, I was like anything else. And S&V can be fun, but I feel like it's missing the droisening. I think a little bit of droisening or being able to at least claim that maybe like explain something away with the possibility of droisening is really helpful. And so I've had some really fun S&V games, but I think with TB, just in terms of the balance of it and the things that can happen, no matter how many times you play it, you can always have a good time with TB. I'm coming around more to BMR than I used to. I think if I'm a good player in BMR, I really like the challenge of trying to figure out what's going on. Evil in BMR stresses me out a little bit more, but you just have to play more. You have to do it more in order to feel more comfortable. I've had a couple games recently as the gossip, and I really like being able to try to solve the game with your gossips. And when that can work and you can be a big piece of the puzzle with that, like the gossip is really rising in the ranks as one of my favorite characters for sure.
I've definitely seen games won basically, largely off of what the gossip's doing. Yeah, for sure. Kind of funny too. I've heard a lot of people, both in these interviews and just out in the wild in general, kind of using that phrase. I'm coming around to BMR. So yeah, it's interesting in that respect.
I think there's some bias in that before you even play it, you hear somebody talk about how painful it is, and so you go into it expecting it to be painful.
I think that's true, and I think it. I'm a big proponent of keeping games down under 2 hours, and I've ran like a 16, 17 player BMR game with Zombull, and it ended under 2 hours, just barely, but it did.
Yep. You did.
So I think that makes people say, "Oh, I don't like BMR because I don't like a 3 or 4 hour game."
Right.
I'm like, well, the solution there is don't run a 3 or 4 hour game.
Yeah.
Butler, I feel like is actually kind of the same way, because I feel like people condition other people not to like it because people just talk about how horrible it is, and I don't know.
And actually, shout out to Jimothy, who I mentioned earlier. He loves, I don't know if he loves the Butler, but the way he sort of explained it is, what a great character for a new player to be, because it teaches you to watch who votes, which is a very helpful social thing to do in a game, because watching who votes can really help you build worlds and potentially solve the game, but you don't think to do it unless you have to. So the roles that prompt you to watch who's voting and to really pay attention to that, it's a good almost teaching tool. So I thought that was an interesting argument. That's
what I and a lot of other people always mention about butlers, watching people vote. Stephen Medway also had said recently that it also gives somebody a reason to go talk to somebody else, which, at the end of the day is kind of the core of the game. Ben Burns, I've always heard it describe it as this is a talking game.
Yes.
So if you have a reason to go talk to somebody else, that's a good thing.
Very true. Very good point. So we're pro Butler here.
Right. Exactly. Some people have I think they call it it's the Butler Innocence Project, I believe. Just a general, trying to get out that the Butler's not as bad as people try to make it out to be.
No, absolutely. And I mean, hey, you could become a Fangu.
Absolutely. So other than Fortune Teller, what kind of characters do you like to bluff?
So I feel like I actually recently have been cutting back on Fortune Teller just because that became a little bit of a bit. And it started in an in-person game where it was literally the only token I drew all day. And it was just hilarious. By the end, when I was handing it to the storyteller, like he couldn't hide the look on his face as he took my token, because it was just, I mean, I should have bought a lottery ticket. What are the chances of that? So it's just, so what's nice there is that I can claim fortune teller to start, and it later be like, oh, I know, I was just kidding. And so that's always nice. What
Right.
else do I like to bluff? I
And,
love
and
a
the bluff could be
fun
as good
music.
or as evil.
Right. Yes. No, that's true. I'll throw out amnesiac sometimes. That's a fun one, whether it's to confuse information or to just not have people worry about you right away. Um, I If I'm feeling up for it, I'll bluff savant. If there's a savant on the script, that's one that I think that can be a lot of fun. I was a mutant bluffing savant that eventually got jumped to in an in-person game once, and I was like, oh, I really do need to make sure I remember this info, and now need to sort of shape it in a certain way, and so that's kind of funny. I'm far more likely to bluff savant online than in person.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I think the key thing is being willing to bluff whatever. There are certain ones that, like, chambermaid scares me unless you're just kind of willing to go chaos mode or something. But usually I'll pick one where people can't sort out immediately if my information is bunk or not. I don't mind bluffing first night rolls, maybe not as a demon, but if there's a Scarlet Woman or something, or if I can Fangu jump, sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm willing to try anything, and I love trying out a new bluff and seeing how it goes. And if it's one that you wouldn't think someone would bluff, that's a great excuse as to why you're probably not evil. So why not?
Absolutely. So you mentioned the lack of drunkenness and poisoning in Sex and Violets, and that's edition that introduces madness, which I feel like it's a good source of misinformation. But just in general, how do you feel about madness in the game?
I love I love the concept of madness, and I agree. I think it depends who you're playing with. If you're playing with people who will simply just break madness, and obviously they can't necessarily confirm themselves by doing that, but the misinformation is gone. So
Mhm.
then it's maybe not as fun. I really try to honor it. I mean, obviously, if Breaking Madness makes sense. I had a game recently where, again, I was an outsider. I was certain it was a Fangu game, and I was Serenovus locked, and it was
Mhm.
making me look more and more suspicious. And I knew the other outsider was dead, and so I was like, if I get jumped to even by accident, I just lose with evil. And so I eventually broke madness, knowing full well there was no way I was going to die, and I didn't. Basically, to say to the evil team, like, this isn't good for any of us, and so that's fun. But I really try to play along, especially if it's a really good snipe by a harpy or by a Serenovus, and I have key information to share. And if I'm honoring madness, I really can't share it. I kind of want to honor their really good snipe, try and kill them so that I can share that information. But again, if I'm harpy mad and it just makes sense for me and the person I'm mad about to die, or if I think I might be mad about an evil player, then I'm happy to break that madness and see what happens too. So I really like playing with it, but I try to honor it. And I really try to sell it too. I think that that's the point of it, and that's what makes it most
Right.
fun.
All right. Well, I always enjoy asking about some of these divisive characters and see what people
Bring
think
it
about
on.
those. So we'll start with the first one. It is from Sex and Violets. How do you feel about Snake Charmer?
I think it's a fun role. It's a super strong role for the good team, especially if you're not it. So I have been known to be pretty timid as a snake charmer. However, lately I'll probably pick somebody night one and just hope for the best. That's only burned me, I think, once ever, and that game ended very fast, through no fault of my own except for that bad pick. It was the evil team was outed, and an empath was in between one of them and me with a 2, so it ended fast. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, I if I manage to find what I think might be an unclaimed bluff, preferably not a demon bluff either. That's what's so tricky. You have to claim to be
Hmm.
a role that isn't in play, and also that the demon is unaware isn't in play. So it's
Right.
you're really rolling the dice. Um, and so if I feel like maybe I've done that, certainly I'll play a widow or a spy who comes to me. I'm never gonna out them. I'll be like, oh, we're working together here. Sure, tell me what I need to do. But yeah, I think it really depends on how comfortable I feel in the game with what I'm claiming. So I'm not opposed to just picking myself from that point on, but I know that's not the most fun option. And sometimes, again, it really depends who you're playing with. If everybody's really taking things seriously, I don't want to get too goofy, but I think it's funny. So why not?
Right.
It can get you good information.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do you feel about Poppy Grower?
I really enjoy the existence of the poppy grower as well. I'm stressed out when I am the poppy grower because I feel like it is my responsibility to stay alive, and I have failed if I do not. But I feel like I've eased up on that a little bit. I really like as evil. I really like teensies because I like the not knowing, because again the pressure's kind of off. So
Hmm.
when you don't know your evil team, if there's a chance you might be a lunatic, that's a little less fun. But if it then is discovered, then it's even more fun. Um, but depending on what's on a script, you might not be able to figure that out simply by your kill not going through. So you really need to be careful there. But no, I as evil in a poppy grower game, I think that's fun. I think it's fun sort of trying to sort things out, figure out who my evil team might be. Depending on what my role is, I might be a little more willing to test the waters with certain players, but usually I just obviously if I'm a psychopath or a witch, I really have to be careful with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
We've
I
seen
think it's
that before.
fun. Yes, exactly. But it's fun. I enjoy it, and especially if you're the Vigor Mortis, because you can just kill whoever you want. It's fine. You're not taking out your evil team exactly. You're actually you're losing their vote, but they get to keep their power. So it's not the end of the world. So I guess it kind of depends on the role, but overall, I think the Poppy
Right.
Growers are a really fun character.
Also, kind of like Oho with Poppy Grower. I know a lot of people
Hmm.
don't like it because a lot of Ohos think, oh, I'll just kill the Poppy Grower. But I find that's not really needed because you're not going to accidentally kill your minions unless you're just picking your minions. um,
Oho is it's such a
yeah.
different game with Oho.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so different because even as a good player, when you're giving 3 for 3s or you're lying about your like, it doesn't matter. They can just find you, and so you just have to play differently. And yeah, no, I agree. I think I see why a lot of times they probably would just take out the poppy grower, but if you want to hide that it's an Oho, you probably don't want to right away.
Right.
And that's a certain kill for you later if you're getting near the end of the game and you want to make sure you end the game and there's a poppy grower still alive. That's
Yeah.
actually really handy. I guess the one risk is if you've killed the poppy grower long ago and they were poisoned or something and you just didn't know it. But yeah, that's interesting.
All right. Well, how do you feel about Atheist?
I think there are a couple characters, and I don't know what other ones you're going to ask me about, so I don't want to jump the boat. But there are a couple characters that I feel like, and Atheist is one of them. I think script can be better when it's on the script and you have to consider the possibility. But my preference is that it's not in play. And there are a couple roles like that. I do, that being said, I would like to be an atheist one day. I think every once in a while that's really fun. I've played some atheist games that left everybody just feeling icky at the end. The Legion of Lunatics game. I don't know if you're familiar with that script, but it was everybody, a bunch of
Maybe.
people thought they were Legion, but they were all lunatics. And the amnesiac and atheist were aware of what was going on and had to figure out who everybody was. And then me and one other person were just entirely clueless. So everybody else was in on something, and I was just I thought spending 2 hours of my life playing a game. So sometimes the game ends and it was like it feels kind of pointless and it doesn't feel so good, and everybody else was talking to each other and not to you, and so that's
Yeah.
not great. But I
It's
also like,
very dependent on the storyteller for sure.
yeah, and I appreciate a storyteller trying new things and feeling like I'm a good person to be in the game when they try it. So I certainly don't fault a storyteller when that happens. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's fun to try and figure that out. I think it's fun as evil if you want to try and push an atheist world. So I like when it's on the script. Not every script, but I like when it's there sometimes. And yeah, I don't mind everybody winning at every once in a while, or everybody losing. So yeah, no,
Yep.
sounds good.
All right. How do you feel about Heretic?
Kind of similar, although I could probably do without
uh,
it. I I've had some great wins on each team with the heretic in the game, and I've had some devastating losses on each team with the heretic in the game. And yeah, I think if I think I feel better losing if the team that wins did it with intention, with the knowledge of the heretic, than if no one knew there was a heretic, and so the team that actually pulled off the win just loses. That feels less great, if that makes sense. But then again, maybe the heretic did that on purpose and was like, you know what, I like the direction this is going because I think everybody's got it wrong, so I'm just gonna stay quiet. That's a really solid win for the heretic, I guess. But no, it adds some flavor and
yeah.
some stress and paranoia, and so we had a game with you where I think it's on YouTube where I got to the demon too late to be like, I'm pretty sure it's a
Mm.
heretic game, and so he didn't self kill. And maybe 2 days later, I was the demon in a game with a heretic on the script, and I was just so paranoid thinking about that game that I killed myself at night and lost the game. So, you win some, you lose some, or you lose all of them. But
All right.
it's a fun character, but it stresses me out.
All right. One more character for this section. How do you feel about Legion?
That's the other one that I think it's really great when it's on the script and people have to be concerned or aware of it. But I prefer games where that isn't actually the demon. If it's a Legion game, I'd prefer to be Legion. I don't like that feeling of being left out and just super paranoid and having everyone lying to you or feeling like that. Basically, I like being in the majority in games. So usually I like being good because there are more people who are good.
Right.
But in a Legion game, I would want to be Legion. I think it's interesting. I think it can be fun to try and coordinate with people really quickly, or very intentionally. That coordination might be to be opposed to one another to really hide the Legion game, but you don't want to have too many double claims. So it's fun to play as evil. As good, I think it's just stressful. But in a game where it's on the script and you have to consider it, I think that that's really interesting, and leads to some interesting decisions and interesting conversations. And again, you're really having to watch the voting. People end up doing things with their own voting because they're worried about a Legion game that then makes them look sketchy, and so that's kind of funny and can kind of help the evil team out. So everything is fine in moderation. I do sometimes avoid Legion scripts if I'm just not up for it, but I think it's helpful to be on the script, and for it to be a possibility. Every once in a while, a game needs to be a Legion game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That and Atheist are both characters that I, don't run many scripts with them on, and if I do, they're less likely to be in. Basically, like you said, they need to be in place some of the times. Otherwise, what's the point? But yeah,
No, exactly. Yeah. No, I think percentage wise, I respect how frequently you run them and how frequently you don't.
all right. We'll do this other section that is a multiple choice for you.
Awesome.
The first question is noble, pixie, or cannibal?
Ooh. Um I'm debating between Pixie and Cannibal. Noble can be fun. Pixie and Cannibal, I think, is a little more interesting. I think I have to go Cannibal. You can have such an adventure in a game as the Cannibal. I've had some real on a semi homebrew type script. There was the homebrew antidote fabled, where if you're double poisoned, you're sober. I was a leech hosted cannibal, and it was fun. And so, yeah, I think I have to go cannibal because you can be everything at some point.
Yeah, or town might not execute day one, and then day two, somebody survives execution, and then you die.
That's the other possibility. But I feel like Undertaker often has the same luck, and it's just sort of the way it goes. I will say
Yeah.
is I going into the nights, it's like, please just let me live for a little while because I'd really like to try this out. But I've now had a couple games as Cannibal where I really got to have a bit of an adventure, so that was fine. I think most recently with you, I was a marionette cannibal, so that was a disappointment, but it worked out.
Then you can really be anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, your next question is Hatter, Golem, or Damsel?
Ooh, between those three, I think I have to go Gollum. um, with the Hatter, you don't really get to do anything; you just don't want to die. And
Right.
with the damsel, that's just stressful. I'll welcome it. I think it can be fun, but I'd rather not. I'd much rather be something and act like I might be a damsel and draw fire from the minions. Gollum is provable. You can sort of provable. You can win the game essentially for the good team, or get the solve. I think the key thing is once you nominate, you need to find a way to die so that you're not brought to the final three to in a situation where you can't nominate. But
Right.
but yeah, I think I would go Gollum there.
All right. Your next one is Fearmonger, Goblin, or Harpy?
I think probably Goblin. I haven't really had a ton of success as the other two. I had a really funny game as Fearmonger in person a while ago, where myself and an alchemist DA just fought for the soul of a goon the entire game, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it was fun, but didn't really accomplish too much. But yeah, I think with Goblin, it's fun to play that way, to be suspicious but not too suspicious, to risk getting executed without claiming Goblin earlier, so that later, if you're nommed again and you claim it, they don't believe you. You can do some fun things there, and it's really about it's that fun sneaky minion, how looking like a demon kind of play, which I enjoy doing when I'm a minion. So and there's an automatic win condition, so I'd say probably Goblin.
All right. One final one for this Kazali, Lil Monster, or Al Hadikia?
You know what? I'll go Kazali and I'll pick my team. I think that makes the most sense. Al Hadikia, either side of it, scares me. Lil Monster is fun, but I think I love, yeah, the idea of being the Kazali and picking a team. I think is really powerful.
And then they have their own built-in bluffs, which I think is a fun aspect of it.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm always like the virgin that becomes the Scarlet Woman, though, and that's never great.
Right.
but, but to be the Kazali, I mean, that's somebody else's problem. I just get to make my minions. So.
All right. Well, one final question. So, looking at the script, which of these characters would you like to be in real life?
Ooh, I think, well, my very favorite character in Clocktower at the moment is Amnesiac. And although I don't want to be an amnesiac in real life, I'd love to have the ability of an amnesiac in real life. That I have some special ability, but I don't know what it is, and I'm on a constant side quest to figure that out. I think that sounds really fun, and there could be really positive benefits. So I don't know. That sounds delightful, and
More
it is my
powerful than
favorite
the
character.
more powerful than the average person, but you don't know what that power is.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like you spend it's like real life, That's you're finding your purpose in life, and you spend each day trying to do that and figure out where you fit and what your purpose is and what you bring to the world. I think that's something beautiful.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Lauren, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun to chat about the best game in the world.
I agree. All right. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Claim. Until next time.